A part of what is fun about playing jazz is that you keep getting better at it and enjoy the new things that you learn. But sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere and it gets harder and harder to keep going, staying motivated. And that's what I want to talk about, using my practice habits and horror stories as an example. My name is Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. If you're not practicing, then you're not gonna get better very fast. For me, it's easy to practice if I have steady time to do so, and usually that's in the morning after bringing the kids to school or shopping. Then I can sit down with my guitar and a cup of coffee to get started with some technique. I try to have some things that I do every day, and then a lot of things that I can change and vary to keep my mind, my ears and my fingers awake. You might be in a period where it's difficult to find a regular time to practice, or maybe it's just difficult to find a time to practice at all. Yeah, of course it's a fake phone call. I mean, it's my metronome calling. My metronome never calls me. And in that case, it can be difficult to stay motivated. So make sure that once you start playing, you focus on the fun things first. Once you're in the habit of playing, you can always look at what you want to work on and what you want to cover, but make sure that you enjoy yourself and have fun first. Maybe, like me, you have the discipline to go through some sort of regular schedule and you're used to practicing, but then you can get stuck by falling into another trap. If everything you practice is only played as an exercise and not really put to use in the music that you play, maybe you don't even practice playing music regularly, then you may be wasting quite a lot of time. If you think about it, it's pretty obvious. Just learning to play up and down the pentatonic scale doesn't make you the next Stevie Ray Vaughan. You need to learn how to make it sound good as well, and that part does not come by itself. It is a part of what you need to practice. This is mostly about doing two things. One, writing lines with what I practice and what I want to add to my vocabulary. And two, making sure that I'm using it, that I can use it when I'm soloing on a song. I think you need both of these steps, and you should always look at whether you're using the material that you're practicing, because otherwise, why are you practicing it? Another aspect of getting things far enough is that you also need to practice making music and not just sounding like an exercise, so that you sometimes play with more space, vocal-like melodies, and not always just spell out all the changes and try to play the correct arpeggio. A thing that I found myself doing is getting stuck with the same things. This can be the same exercise that doesn't really improve my playing anymore, or can be always playing the same song. You need to challenge yourself to expand your vocabulary and also make sure that you have places to use that vocabulary. And this can be in terms of changing up the songs that you're playing, maybe the key, the tempo, or the chord progressions. This is something that I try to catch whenever I can, and it can be tricky to figure out if you need to go to another song or break up the technique schedule that you're really used to. But doing so every now and again is very healthy for your playing. Lately I realized that I don't spend too much time on chords in my technique practice, and probably that was never a problem until COVID, because I was always on gigs comping for several hours every week. But now that I'm not doing that, then I started to add some chords in there because it felt like that was kind of slipping away and I needed to work on it. My point is that a practice routine should not be static. You want to adjust it according to how it's going, something that I'll talk more about later in this video. So if you're only practicing on one song, like a blues, or like me playing out of nowhere way too often, then it's time to change things up and make sure that you have a musical diet that's healthy and varied. The easiest way to learn to improvise freely on harmony is to learn a lot of songs. I've talked about this quite often, and it ties together with all the things I already talked about in this video. Studying songs is where you put it all to use. You learn how to play over the important chord progressions, harmonizing melodies, using chord voicings with the right extensions, and also tying it all together in a story. When to play a vocal melody, a bebop line, or something more abstract and modern. Learning songs and playing songs is where everything you practice comes together, and where your artistic and personal take on the music is created. Don't rob yourself of that. For me, it's about sitting down and playing a song, start to finish, and really get the whole thing to make sense, as if I'm playing in a band and performing it. Sometimes find it difficult to practice like that, but it is also the place where you're really in the zone and new things can happen. If you're looking for songs to explore, I'll link to a list of 50 jazz standards that are really useful to have in your repertoire. And Misty is not on that list. Information Overload is one of my favorite Living Colour songs, which isn't really relevant, but I just thought I'd recommend it if you never heard that song. When I was starting out trying to learn jazz, I didn't have internet, and the library only had David Baker books on jazz, which I didn't really like, and they were also not that useful for me. Most of the music came from borrowing a few LPs or CDs that were available. Compared to my teachers, I actually had a ton of information available. They were wearing out singles and using the radio, waiting for the song to get played again. I also remember seeing David Liebman's chromatic approach to jazz harmony, buying that because Pat Metheny recommended it, even though at the time I couldn't even play a solo on Autumn Leaves, and that's probably also a description of how useful that was at that moment. Today you have everything a few Google searches away and can pretty much find information about anything about jazz at all levels, but we end up with another problem: information overload. It is impossible to choose, and you never know who to trust and what fits together. Even on my channel, the amount of videos is so immense that it's hard to navigate. The important thing is probably to try to stick with songs as smaller goals, because they're very practical and they will help you gradually develop and also use your skills. I have a post where I talk about this on my website, and I'll link to that in the video description. That's also one of the reasons I decided to create my course, the Jazz Guitar Roadmap, because in that type of content you can go step by step for a longer period of time, something that would never work on YouTube, where nobody watches part 2 of anything, and certainly not part 43 out of 67 videos. It's important that you develop your skills for soloing over chord changes, and if you check out this video, then you can learn to really nail the changes and have an easier time learning songs, which will really boost the development of your skills as a jazz guitarist or musician. Or would that be jazz guitarist and musician?